That's great. You know, I was sad that we couldn't be at St. Andrews and have our usual potluck and annual meeting. So thank you so much for everyone coming to this Zoom meeting. I know we get tired of being on Zoom. We want to be together. That's going to happen, but not right now. So I want to welcome everyone. Good morning. As most of you know, I am Kathy Rutherford, and I am the proud president of Democrats of the Red Rocks. It seems like a very long year since our last annual meeting. I want to share with you some of my thoughts about what has passed, why we are where we are now, and how we can move forward into the future. But if you could mute yourselves, that would be helpful. I heard somebody's voice, so that would be helpful. Thank you. But before I do that,
Kathy, do you want your screen share on? Because it's on right now.
oh shit. No, not really. Thanks. I don't know about you guys. I get a little nervous when I'm making
There we
a
go.
speech. I did not mean to do that. I just meant to go over to it. Well, now you know my whole speech is sitting here. So before we look at the past and the future, I want to take a moment of silence to honor all of our friends, family members, healthcare professionals. Oh, haven't they had a hard year? Teachers, paraprofessionals, and others whom we have lost this year. I know we lost two close friends. The impact of their passing has been felt by us all. So let's just take a moment and think about them. Okay, thank you for that moment of silence. I want to assure all of you that the Democrats of the Red Rocks is always hard at work, both during an election year and a non-election year. I was thinking back on 2021, and three main DORR initiatives came to mind. So I'm going to talk a bit about them. We created the Action Committee, thanks to Toby Friedman, which coordinated the efforts of concerned Democrats and independents who spent hours upon hours contacting our 2021 state legislators to weigh in on bills that were being created, and hours upon hours making phone calls or sending emails to our federal legislators. And I want to thank Mick Jordahl for his work in creating those scripts and action calls focused at the federal level. DORR also reinstated the neighborhood program, which is now 22 volunteers strong. The neighborhood program works to connect voters with an informed DORR volunteer in their own neighborhood to increase voter awareness and engagement, with a particular focus on generating greater turnout in this important midterm election. Relationship. This is the keystone of the neighborhood program. DORR also actively engaged in the fight, and it was a fight, to steer the Independent Redistricting Commission to create fair districts. In all three of these initiatives, DORR continued to be the source of information regarding politics and issues through our informative breakfasts like this, our Zoom breakfast, our emails, our website, and through our office staff. And I know many of you here were involved in those initiatives, and thank you so much for all of your hard work. But as many of us know, our efforts did not always have the effect that we so desperately hoped for. The state legislature still passed many horrible bills, including voter suppression bills and bills that once again gutted funding for education. The Independent Redistricting Commission totally turned a deaf ear to the countless comments and testimonies that voters in the Sedona and Verde Valley presented to the commission. As you will hear from Charlie Fisher this morning, the new districts have created new challenges for us. But we are Democrats, and like-minded independents, we are strong, persistent, and passionate, and we will not give up the fight. I'm not going to stop fighting, and I know you aren't either. These challenges only make us more determined, more committed, and more willing to fight the fight. The changes that we are seeing now are the death throes of the Republican Party. They are losing their edge because they have a fractured party. It's a party that's breaking in pieces. They are losing their edge due to their attacks on the minority community at a time when there is an ever increasing minority vote in our country and in our state. And they are losing their edge as our country continues, despite everything, to progress towards fairness, as our country continues to face our prejudices, as our country moves to true inclusiveness, even if the pace of those changes is sometimes maddeningly slow. These principles are the principles that Democrats stand for, and we will not stand by and watch our country pulled apart by politics that undermine these values. We will fight. We will hold tight to our hope, and we'll move forward into a new, more equitable future. You know, it's folks like us, like you and like me, that have made the difference in history. There have been dark, dark days in the past, and there have been forces of malice that folks like us have had to fight. This is our opportunity to make a difference now and a difference for the future. We will continue to fight and adjust our strategies to overcome the forces of malice in our own time. And we all know that they're here, that they exist. In the face of these challenges, we can be bolstered by a history of accomplishments that we should not forget. We need to remind ourselves that we had successes in 2020. We got rid of that redhead in the White House. We have to not forget that, because sometimes we get discouraged with what's happening now, but he's not there any longer. We helped elect a Democrat to the White House, helped elect a Democrat to the US Senate, and we helped to re-elect a Democrat to Congress. We helped elect a Democrat to the Corporation Commission, the Yavapai Board of Supervisors, and we helped elect Democrats to the Sedona City Council. And this happened due to the work of committed volunteers, to committed Democrats, and committed independents of DORR. In 2022, we will fight to elect Democrats across the ballot again, all the way across. There are critical races this year: the Senate, the US Senate, the governor, the Secretary of State, Attorney General, Superintendent of Public Schools, Corporation Commission, just to name a few. We are privileged to have with us today, and I'm so glad they could come, and we'll hear from them a little later in the program, gubernatorial candidates Katie Hobbs and Aaron Lieberman. Thank you for being here, Katie and Aaron. We must each choose our pathway to action, but know this: we must act. We cannot sit idly by and watch as our democracy is threatened. Know also that we can make a difference. Know that we will make a difference. So I'm going to end today with some words from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Quote, "He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why right, temporarily deflected, is stronger than evil triumphant. In some not too distant future, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. Okay, so now we're moving onward. So that's what my words for today. We have to keep fighting, we have to keep moving forward and take our discouragement, our disappointment, our anger, and funnel it, because we will stand. Okay, so we're moving on now to our board election. We always do that every annual meeting. I'm trying to get to the right place here. So I have the honor of introducing our current board. And Frankie, our secretary and vice president, is going to do her best to highlight them so you can see them as I introduce them, because I know everybody's screen's a little bit different, so it's kind of hard that way. All right, so before I do that, hold just a second. I want to recognize and give thanks to two of our board members who left the board this year, Ronnie Joam and Toby Friedman. Ronnie Joam was on the board longer than I can remember. I think it was 12 years. She served in many roles, including vice president, but most of you probably remember her as a membership chair and how it was impossible, totally impossible to get by her at the annual meeting without paying your dues for the new year. Thanks, Ronnie, for all of your years of service and dedication to Democrats of the Red Rocks and Democrats in period. And we'll miss you. Toby Friedman took on two major jobs while she was on the board. She did other things too, but these were her two major things. She created and chaired the Action Committee, which I talked about a little while ago. And she also chaired the committee for the picnic, which I know a lot of us went to and we had a great time. And that was a lot of work that was put into that. Toby is going to continue chairing the Action Committee for 2022, and we thank her for that. Toby, thank you so much for all your incredible hard work. And thank you also for continuing to do all the work you will do in the future. We will miss you too. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce our current board members, and then we'll go to our election. So we have Frankie Reamer. She's our vice president, secretary, and communication chair. Gary Stewart is our treasurer. Kathy Kinsella is our parliamentarian. She's on the election committee and the communications committee. Holly Plug is a liaison to the Yavapai County Democratic Party. She's on the election committee and the communications committee. Ellen Ferreira, who you'll see in a little bit, is our program chair, and she's also on the election committee. Linda Scott is our office manager. She makes sure everything is running smoothly there, and she's on the election committee. Angela Lefevre, who is a former DORR president, is also on our board, and she is on our election committee. And Shelley Haken is communications committee, computer technology, and MailChimp. And I know those are broad overviews. I'm sure I'm missing things for each of the board members, and I apologize for that. But those are current board members. We have a couple of board members that are new since 2021 that you wouldn't have met at the last board meeting. Mike Cosentino is a liaison to the Verde Valley Yavapai Democrats. Stephen Hanks is the communication committee, membership and fundraising committee. B is membership and fundraising committee chair, B Hanks, sorry, she's Stephen's wife. Connie Levinson's communications committee and voter registration. So I hope I got everybody. Did I miss anybody? We have an incredibly hardworking board. And as you could tell, just by listening to that, there are a ton of people that are on multiple committees, right? So I guess I'll just kind of give everybody a round of applause for all of their hard work. We're in committee meetings all the time. We're always working. All right. So now we're going to vote on the board members that are either brand new or they are up for re-election. You can vote in this meeting if you are a member, and our definition of member from our bylaws is that if your membership hasn't elapsed for more than 30 days, which probably everybody here counts into that category because they usually elapse in January, right? So if you're a board member in 2021, even if you haven't renewed, you can vote on this particular one. I want everyone to look at the bottom of their screens. We're going to try to do this one way, and I'll have an alternate, but click on the reactions button on the bottom of your screen and you will see, no, that's not where it is. Never mind. Click on, where's raise hand at?
I'm here,
under
but
reactions.
I only spotlight so many people.
Okay, that's okay.
We
It's
have
under
more
reactions.
people than
Oh, I see.
spotlight,
It's
so
not an icon.
I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So if you click on reactions, the bottom button is raise hand, and that's the way we're going to vote. Now, if you're having difficulty with that technology, don't worry about it. Just raise your hand, okay? Because we have to count. And the first thing I should say is, Frankie, do we have a quorum? Yes.
Yes,
do.
we
Yes,
do.
we do.
Kathy, did you
Yes, we have a
introduce
quorum.
Mark Anton?
No, I'm going to do that in a second.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that right now. Okay. So, all right, so everyone put their hand back down now, or maybe Shelley can do that, because I have to introduce the board members first and then we'll vote on them. Sorry if I confused you. All right, so the election that we're going to hold right now is for these particular individuals. So we have former board members Linda Scott, Gary Stewart, Holly Plug, and Frankie Reamer, whose terms ended, and so they are up for re-election. And I mentioned those a second ago. And then we have Mark Anton, who is on this, there he is, he's on this meeting, and he is going to be a brand new board member. Mark jumped in feet first, and he is already on the communications committee. So, so we will be voting on that slate. And I will say it one more time. We have Linda Scott, Gary Stewart, Holly Plug, Frankie Reamer, and Mark Anton. So the first thing I need to ask is, does anyone want to split in, or I'm going to make a motion to elect the board members. This motion, sorry. I'm going to make a motion to elect these new board members: Linda Scott, Gary Stewart, Holly Plug, Frankie Reamer, and Mark Anton. Do I have a second to my motion?
Second.
I have a second. Does anyone want to split off part of that motion and vote separately on it? Raise your hand now if you do. Okay, so we'll vote on the entire slate at one time. And so the motion is that we are voting for the members I mentioned a second ago, individuals to be on the new 2022 DORR board. So please raise your hand if you say aye to that. And we're going to take a second here and count. Please keep your hands up if they're physical hands. We're having people count, so we make sure.
According to the, we've got 39 participants raising their hand. And then I don't know how many more have their actual hands up.
Okay.
My computer's a little funny.
How many did we have in our quorum, Frankie?
Shelley, do you know? I know that we needed to have 25, so.
Yeah, we have 50.
Okay, so that's a majority vote, so that motion is passed. So welcome, Mark Anthony, to our board, and we're so glad all of you
Cleopatra.
are re-elected. What I'd like everybody to do now is go to reactions and click on that again and lower your hands. All right. I am now going to turn the program over to Ellen, Ellen Ferreira, who is our program chair.
Thank you, Kathy. Great speech this morning.
Oh, thank you.
Our first speaker today is somebody that you may not have heard of, but he's well known with a lot of the people who are active in LD6 politics. Charlie Fisher is now the executive director of the Arizona Democratic Party. And for the past 2 years, he was the director of the Legislative Campaign Committee for Arizona Democratic Party. Like many of us, he is a complete political junkie, and it sounds like he always has been. And he really has his finger on the pulse of what is happening in our state. That LD6 working group that we used to have for the past 2 years leading up to the 2020 election, the LD6 working group met every other Sunday morning. Sunday morning meetings are a pain in the butt, as we all know. However, Charlie was there working with us every other Sunday morning through the election. And Charlie, I can't tell you how much it meant to us to have you and your expertise and your contacts there with us on those meetings, on those grueling Sunday morning calls. So thank you for that. Charlie has gone on to become executive director of the Arizona Democratic Party. They're having a huge meeting this weekend on Saturday. So we're very lucky that he was able to carve out the time to be with us this morning. So Charlie, that's all I'm going to say. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Ellen,
Welcome.
and thank you, Kathy, and everyone for the invitation to speak with you all this morning. I'll be honest, Kathy Rutherford did an incredible job opening up this meeting and took a lot of my bullets. So I'm going to be pretty brief, and I'm happy to take questions, and I'll pass it to Ellen to facilitate and talk about whatever you all are interested in. But like Ellen said, my name is Charlie Fisher. I'm an Arizona native, and feel incredibly fortunate to be in this role. Started sort of my career post-college working in the environmental advocacy realm before I sort of transitioned to local and state level politics. So worked on several municipal campaigns, managed legislative races, worked on some issues with the teachers union and on some healthcare stuff before eventually, like Ellen said, moving over to the ADLCC, which is the project of the state party that focuses just on the legislature, and was really proud to be able to lead that organization for the 2018 and 2020 cycles. And yes, the LD6 working group, I have incredibly fond memories, and the folks up in LD6, or the now former LD6, I think really set an incredible example of what good collaboration and cooperation, coordination, what it looks like and how to do it well. And obviously we will forever be disappointed that we weren't ultimately successful, but I could not be more proud of the effort that we put in, of the quality of campaigns that our candidates run, the quality of candidates that we had running and representing our party was just incredible, and an incredible experience. So now in my role at the state party, my life is a little different, but I will say that I will always have a real passion and motivation for state level politics. We know all of the debates and the narratives that's happening at the national level, and of course that stuff is critically important, and we need to focus on it this year. But I really firmly believe that the way that we make the most immediate impact, positive impact on the lives of everyday Arizonans is by changing our state government, by flipping the legislature, by electing Democrats to statewide office. And the exciting thing is that we have that opportunity right in front of us this November. And I'm really excited to hear that we've got two of our fantastic gubernatorial candidates we'll be speaking to a little bit later in the program. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You all know 2021 was an incredibly, incredibly difficult year. We continue to muddle our way through this incredibly difficult pandemic and all of the various impacts that that's had on our lives, our mental health. And it, of course, has been a challenge in terms of organizing and engaging our fellow citizens and voters. January 6th was a really dark and painful way to start what should have been a really exciting year that we as Arizona voters and leaders of our party played an incredible role, important role in electing Joe Biden and electing Kamala Harris and winning, albeit narrowly, a majority in the US Senate and House. Then immediately, almost, it felt like we pivoted to the fraudit in Arizona and this Republican sham effort, which I think has been exposed time and time again, for the circus that it was, truly unserious, and even more, I think it was dangerous and intentionally so. I was really proud that ADP was the first entity in Arizona to bring forth a lawsuit to ask for a stop to the fraud. And although we weren't able to get it eliminated altogether, we did deliver serious transparency throughout that process, making sure that they were forced to follow state guidelines and best practices, professional elections observers had access to the floor. Reporters were able to go and report deeply on every single day without having to sign up for a volunteer shift, which was the case before our lawsuit. You know, we had another legislative session, unfortunately, with Republicans, even with incredibly narrow majorities, bringing divisive legislation from voter registration, attacking reproductive rights, continuing their assault on our public schools, despite voters, mandates being sent clearly. We had, of course, the redistricting process, which I'll talk about a little bit, but legislative vacancies. You all know that our senior senator has very much been in the spotlight, not always in the most favorable terms, and that has created challenges for us as well. And despite all of those things, I couldn't be more proud of what we accomplished in 2021. I think for years I have been hearing that the state party needs to take organizing seriously, that we need to organize year round, that we need to be less transactional in how we engage in communities, and we did that. We did it in an odd year. We now have Project 1530, the first ever permanent statewide organizing program under the Arizona Democratic Party umbrella. And so I hope that continues to be the legacy and a central tactic and a central effort for ADP forever. We invested significant resources in the redistricting effort. It was a 3-year-long effort with staff focused solely on the commission, engaging communities and liaisons. And I know many of you, like Kathy said, played, such an engaged role, and it was so important. And I think, despite the reality and the dynamics of the commission, as it were, I think that we avoided the worst case scenario, and we came back. We were able to achieve maps that give us path to the majority. I don't know if it's going to be this November or next November, but I really do believe that this map, specifically at the legislative level, is going to continue to provide opportunities for Democrats to make the case, to win competitive districts, and ultimately deliver the majorities that we've been fighting for, for many, many years. And we've made history. We purchased a new building after our old office was burned down in the summer of 2020, which is incredibly exciting to finally have a new home as we slowly move back to some more in-person activities. And we made historic investments in our county parties, $300,000 invested in our county party infrastructure, and continuing to strengthen those partnerships in so many different ways. So I'll just close before I open it up to questions by saying, sort of really echoing everything that Kathy said at the beginning of this meeting. We know that midterm elections for the party in power at the federal level are challenging. We've seen all of the frustration, we've seen the polling numbers, and we know that we have challenges ahead, but I hope that we do not allow ourselves to sort of wallow in disappointment, and we understand the opportunity ahead of us. We in Arizona are some of the most empowered voters in America. Every single vote that we cast matters. Every conversation that you have with a voter matters. Every volunteer shift that you sign up for matters, and ultimately could be the difference between us electing a Democratic governor, a Democratic Secretary of State, and ultimately serving as a bulwark for American democracy. And so I know that we have challenges, but I also know that we have incredible opportunity. And so thank you all for being here. Thank you all for staying committed to this work, because we've got so much work to do, and I'm excited to continue in this fight alongside you. So with that, Ellen, I'll pass it back to you. I don't know how you want to handle Q&A or how much time we've got, but I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Charlie. That's helpful and inspiring. And we just have a lot of work ahead of us. Questions? If you would like to put your questions in the chat, that would be good. Okay, I see there's one here from Kathy and Chris. Can you explain how people can sign petitions on the Secretary of State website? Good question. Good question.
Yeah. So there are some issues with the e-qual portion of the Secretary of State's website. This is a new challenge, and it all stems from the redistricting process. So I don't know if folks saw, but on Tuesday, the IRC had what was supposed to be their last meeting, which was really a formality after counties made sort of administrative tweaks to the maps just to make sure precincts were whole as much as possible, and making just sort of final small changes that weren't going to affect the overall performance. Unfortunately, there was some issue with the chairwoman and she had to leave. So the commission will be back on Friday to approve and transmit the final maps to the Secretary of State, which begins a whole nother sort of weeks-long process of uploading the maps and then providing that data to the counties and to the state party so that we can then upload it to VAN. Apparently that process has essentially broken the e-qual system. And so as it stands right now, candidates for any districted office, whether it's congressional or legislative, are going to have to go and circulate petitions in person. And so my latest understanding is that and Secretary Hobbs is on, so she can speak to this from a much more educated perspective than I can. But my understanding is that candidates for the time being need to get hard signatures.
And following up on that, Charlie, this is the first year, I believe, that local candidates are also able to use the online petitioning. Is that affected, or is that still open? And we have local candidates that I think are trying to get their petitions signed, like at the city council level and the mayoral level. That still, does somebody have information that can be posted about how you can sign for them as well?
Secretary Hobbs, I feel like you're the better person to address that question, so I do not misspeak here.
I'm happy to do that. Sorry, I don't mean to jump on your time. The system isn't broken. This is a once in a decade event, and this decade, the filing deadline is much earlier than it was in 2012, which is the last time we had equal, actually the first and last time that we've had equal interrupted by redistricting. And so the system cannot hold two maps. First of all, the legislative maps aren't even approved yet, and the counties aren't going to, the commission's not going to send the congressional maps to the counties until they approve the legislative maps. So the counties can't even start doing the work that they're supposed to do to fix the voter registration system so voters are in the right districts. And so equal is simply an interface between the voter that wants to sign a petition or give a qualifying contribution and the voter registration database. And so there can't be maps in the system that aren't certified yet. So candidates have a choice. They can remain registered as a candidate in their current district. So if you're in LD 20, if you're in LD 6, then you stay registered as a candidate in LD 6, and you can continue to collect qualifying signatures on equal. If you choose to register in your new district, that's fine, but then we cannot guarantee, the system cannot guarantee that the signatures collected in equal will be valid, because they will reflect the current District 6 instead of whatever new district the person is in. And that's the problem. The system was never designed to hold two maps and be able to have people running in two different districts at the same time. So, and the reporters have gotten it all wrong. And so, sorry, I'm so sorry. I just felt like I needed to jump in. It's not a problem with the system. So thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I did use that system just this week. We have, yes, you're right, Kathy. We have our city council candidates, Mark Furman and Brian Fultz, and our mayoral candidates are on there. Tom O'Halloran is on there. All these people, you go to the Secretary of State website and it's very easy to follow. And it says sign petitions. You put in your driver's license number and you put in your email address, and it will show you one candidate, and then you can click and see the others. They're all there and they all need your signatures.
And as far as I know, the system won't be affected for local candidates. It's just the legislative and congressional, because of when the maps are going to be ready and the filing deadlines for those candidates. And March 5th, I believe, is when we are going to take the system offline so that the maps can start to be updated. But people can still collect petition signatures on paper, which is mostly what the bulk of legislative candidates do anyway.
So Katie, if I went on and I signed the petition for Tom O'Halloran, for instance, it's a different it's a different congressional district, but I'm in it. Will that be okay if we already went on and did it?
If you went on and signed and it gave you Tom O'Halloran's petition to sign, that means that you're still, because as a registered voter, no changes have been made to districts yet. So you're still in CD1. And if you were able to sign Tom's petition, that means Tom's still listed as a candidate in CD1. So you're fine.
And that'll get moved over, okay, when the system gets updated. That's
Yeah, but once the system, if Tom, I don't know the new district number for Tom's district, but if he changes to District 2, he's no longer going to be able to use equal because the maps are not going to be updated, and CD2, current CD2 people will be able to sign it and they won't be eligible to sign it. So that's the problem that we have.
Okay, thank
Wait,
you.
I need to get it clear. Will the signatures, the online signatures in CD1 be valid for his district in CD2? Okay.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I should stop taking all of Charlie's time. You should ask me.
No, thank you so much, Secretary. I apologize if I misspoke or mischaracterized anything. That was super helpful. So thank you for that.
Okay. Katie, if you want to stay on here, we have some questions, and then we'll give you your time to speak in a few minutes. But Charlie, lawsuits. Have you heard of lawsuits that are pending as a result of the IRC actions?
Yeah. So this is something that we looked at consistently and comprehensively with not only our attorneys, but with some Voting Rights Act and mapping experts, academic type folks. Unfortunately, we don't see a path forward on the legislative map in terms of bringing a lawsuit. So we as ADP have made the decision ultimately not to bring litigation against the legislative map. It's a different story at the congressional level. There have been, as you all probably know, several coalitions and organizations that we worked with hand in hand every step of the way. The National Democratic Redistricting Committee, we utilized the Brennan Center often for their expertise. And then there was also the Latino Coalition for Fair Redistricting that was led by Supervisors Gallardo and Grijalva. I have heard, although I don't believe any final decisions have been made, that there will likely be litigation brought on to the congressional map. So we haven't made a final decision. We're still in communication with those folks about whether ADP will be a party to those cases. But my understanding is that litigation very likely on the congressional map and highly unlikely on the legislative map.
All right, good. Thank you. We have a question from one of our new DORR board members, who Mark, who is interested in your take on the most important issues that we can address to independent and open-minded Republican voters.
That's a great question. I wish there were an easy answer. I think, Mark, you're absolutely right that we have to appeal to those folks. And I think, fortunately, the contrast between Democratic candidates and ultimately our nominees and the candidates that Republicans are putting forward, even for the most high-profile office, but you all will be very familiar with Wendy Rogers. It could not be more stark. We do not have to work hard, I don't think, to draw a contrast, whether we're talking about funding our schools always, right? Investing in public health and basic public health measures, investing in small businesses and investing in our people. I think that reproductive rights will continue to be a hot topic. I believe the Supreme Court is taking up the Texas abortion case very soon. So I think there is a laundry list of issues, and we will certainly have some hard data to look at, both from the file, and we plan on doing some polling as well, to really identify what issues that we should be talking about and the frames that we should be using. Obviously, inflation and economic issues, have been really top of mind, and I'm not super thrilled with the way that they've been covered and the way that sort of blame, if I could use that word, has been assigned. But we are still, we're still very much in the throes of this pandemic, as we all know. And I think we as Democrats need to need to deliver an optimistic and aspirational message about what the future of Arizona looks like with Democrats in charge. So I know that wasn't a clean answer of just one or two issues. I think there's a long list, and we want to also give space to our nominees to be able to tell their story in a way that is always, in alignment with Democratic values.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. You're more than welcome to stay on and hear what the Secretary of State says. But we appreciate your time very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Kathy, because Katie has a hard deadline by which she has to leave us at 11 o'clock, I think, why don't we postpone our announcements for a few minutes till after she has the opportunity to address us. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, cool. Katie, come back. Whoever's holding the strings, make Katie come back. Katie Hobbs is no stranger to Sedona. She has been here many times, both in person and virtually. In fact, she was at the last in-person DORR annual meeting that we held at St. Andrew's Church. I guess it was, when was it? 2020, 2021, yeah, right before it all hit the fan. And we appreciate the attention that you've shown us. Katie is one of 3 candidates now that is running for Arizona governor, 3 Democratic candidates. I don't even know what's happening on the other side. It doesn't matter. We don't care. We're going to run the hardest campaign we have. And so today we've got Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State, with us, and we also have Aaron Lieberman, who will be joining us in a little while. Katie, welcome. We all got kind of a kick in the teeth last night. It wasn't unexpected, but it was just as painful. You want to talk about that at all?
Sure. I mean, I have been saying this for a while now, and as someone who's had a front row seat to watch really our attempts to dismantle our democracy as we know it here in the United States of America. So really, democracy is on the ballot in 2022. And I know that there's so much work in front of us, and we just heard from Charlie, but we have to make sure that voters know what's at stake, because it's not just flipping the governor's seat and potentially flipping one or both legislative chambers, but the future of elections in our country is at stake, because we're seeing in 2020, we knew that elections were going to face unprecedented legal challenges. And to a large degree, those legal challenges were unsophisticated. They didn't have evidence. In Arizona, 9 cases were thrown out. But these folks are coming from all fronts, and they're honing what's working. And we're seeing the former president trying to install his loyalists in key positions, governor's offices, secretary of state's office, legislators who make the election laws, who have tried to pass laws that would allow them to overturn the state's electors. And so this is, every single race on the ballot is critical. And I've been able to continue to do my job and fight back against all of this, but I don't have all the tools I need. And I'm working with a governor who has his head in the sand and won't stand up and say anything, and an attorney general who is taking every opportunity to attack me. And that's why some of the misinformation is out there about what happened with Equal, because these folks are just continuing to try to make me look bad every opportunity that they get. And so it is, we have a lot at stake in the election in 2022, and it could set the groundwork for what happens in 2024 and the future of our democracy. And I don't mean to overstate that, but I've really had a front row seat to this. So it's frustrating that 50 Republicans also did not support voting rights. When in 2006, this was completely bipartisan, the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act passed unanimously. It wasn't even controversial. It's alarming that we've come to this point in our country. And we're going to have to lead on this from the states if the federal government won't take action. And we're seeing a slew of terrible election-related bills introduced, worse than last year. There were over 70 or close to 70 in the first week of the legislative session. And so we have to be vigilant, and then we have to stay on top of what passes and what we have to do to educate and inform voters so that they can make sure to be able to continue to exercise their freedom to vote. So that's not my gubernatorial stump speech, but you asked me about that specifically. So that's my dire warning to everyone that we can't let up, even though we're tired and we've worked really hard to get where we are. We're not done yet.
So tell us about your gubernatorial stump speech. How are things going?
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I've been to Sedona a few times already in this race, and I'm so grateful for many of you that have already supported me. And I know I haven't had a chance to talk with all of you, so appreciate this opportunity. I was born and raised right here in Arizona and love the state. And I know that we can work together to make it the best place in the country to live, work, and raise a family. I got into elected office because I was a social worker, and I became a social worker really because of how I grew up and the importance of service to my community that was instilled in me by my parents and our church community. Times that we struggled, we got through thanks to this community that my parents were a part of. And that really taught me firsthand to always give back when I can. And I knew early on that I wanted to help people, particularly vulnerable people that were struggling. And so I became a social worker, and I worked as helping to lead a large domestic violence agency, and saw firsthand how broken politics often derails real change, and eventually decided to run for the legislature because I was tired of people who were more focused on their reelection than serving the people that they were elected to serve. And when in the legislature, I worked to tackle issues that were important to me. I worked to protect survivors of domestic abuse. I cleared the backlog of untested rape kits in the state with Republican support. Worked with Governor Brewer to expand Medicaid, providing healthcare to hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, and worked with Governor GC to pass historic legislation to fight the opioid epidemic head on. Went to the Secretary of State's office to continue this work for Arizona, and took what was a wasteful and mismanaged office and worked with Democrats and Republicans to streamline operations, fix broken systems, and save taxpayers' money, most importantly, making the office more accountable to the people. I also wanted to oversee and conduct the most successful election that we possibly could in 2020, not knowing at all, knowing that it would be a tough year because Arizona was going to be in the spotlight in a way we hadn't been before, but not nearly understanding the roadblocks that we have faced with a global pandemic and unprecedented attacks on the validity of our election, and even violent threats against me, my family, and my staff. The thing that you need to know about me is that I never back down when things get tough. No matter what the challenge is, I'm always going to stand up for what's right. It's what I've been continuing to do in defending the results of the 2020 election from the conspiracy theories and misinformation, standing up to the fraud in Maricopa County, even though it's resulted in even more ugly vitriol. What has been confirmed for me over the last year is that our state government is being run by a group of conspiracy theorists who are out of touch with everyday Arizonans, and willing to put their loyalty to the former president ahead of what's right for Arizona and what's right for our country. Instead of working on the issues that matter most to the people of Arizona, they're busy relitigating the 2020 election because they didn't like the result. And even most Republicans are tired of this political posturing and they want to move on. I'm running for governor to get to work for Arizona, to deliver accountability, transparency, and results for Arizona, as I've done my whole time in elected office. We have a massive opportunity to make Arizona the best place in the country to live, work, and raise a family. But we can only do that if we have leaders who are willing to put partisan differences aside and start tackling the issues that we keep ignoring. Meaningfully funding our schools, fixing our roads, investing in tomorrow's workforce, bringing down the cost of living, supporting small businesses, providing opportunities for economic success and entrepreneurship, improving healthcare, addressing climate change issues that affect us right here, and of course, protecting voting rights and our democracy. Our government can be a force for good and work for Arizona families, but only when our leaders are focused on working together rather than looking to score political points. My campaign is off to a really incredible start. We just filed our first campaign finance report. And except for the millionaires who are self-funding, I outraised everyone in the field and raised more than raised more than both of my primary opponents combined. So we're off to a really good start as we hit the ground in 2022. I am continuing to gather endorsements from legislators. Right now have over a dozen. All of the unions that have endorsed in the campaign have endorsed me, and continuing to work to build that support. Meanwhile, as was alluded to, the Republican primary is a circus, and everyone's trying to be the most Trumpy option and appeal more to him than they are to the people of Arizona. So I know this is going to be a really tough year, a really tough race, but I know that we can work together to win the race and get our state back on the right track. And your support so far has been so helpful, and I hope it will continue. Those of you who have supported, and if you want to get involved with us, please go to katiehobbs.org to sign up to volunteer, make a contribution. You can still sign my petition online. There's a link there to do that, and get involved in other ways in the campaign. And thank you again so much for having me.
Our pleasure. We're always thrilled to have you here with us, Katie. Thank you. Anybody have questions in the few minutes that Katie's got left with us? She's a busy lady.
Mhm.
All right, good. Okay. Well, we appreciate, as I said.
I have a question, Ellen.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Katie, the reports on these phony electors, as far as Arizona goes, show that there might have been two different groups. Can you explain who these two groups entailed, and were any of them on either slate actual state legislators, or were they outside people?
That's a good question. And I'm actually really surprised that this is being reported as new information. We were in the process of doing the Electoral College. We had been in constant communication with the National Archives, which is who we send the slate of electors to. There's a whole process they have to go through, including the official Electoral College convening and coming from our office. And so we knew that these two slates had been submitted. One was by the Arizona Republican Party. I believe that Jake Hoffman, who was newly elected to the legislature and hadn't been sworn in yet, was one of those electors. I don't know who else is on that list. He wouldn't answer reporters' questions about it. The other slate was submitted by a group called Sovereign Citizens, I believe, I don't know who they are or what they are about. We sent cease and desist letters to both of them and then referred them to the Attorney General for investigation and possible prosecution. And you can imagine from what I've already said on this call, what the Attorney General did with that. Absolutely nothing. Instead, he's focused on trying to criminally prosecute me for a system that can't do what the law says it's supposed to do. So anyway, that's a whole other issue. So we knew about these electors from December 14th, and we acted on it, and the Attorney General has done nothing. But bottom line, it's not new information, and hopefully this new scrutiny spurs the Attorney General to action. I wouldn't put money on it if I was a betting woman, but.
Does it surprise you that this isn't being looked at as a bigger scandal, as the scandal that it really is? That I know things like this get lost in the shuffle of the myriad scandals that we're dealing with constantly, but this seems to me to be like a 5-0 on fire, and it's not being treated that way. Right.
And nationally, this is all coming out as part of the January 6th Commission. but it's the electors are up to the states. And so the states who sent in where there were fake slates, it's up to the states to act on. And our attorney general has showed over and over again that he's more on the side of his political future rather than the voters and upholding the will of the voters in Arizona.
Of course, yeah.
One of the questions, a follow-up question here. Can the Arizona citizens file suits against the phony electors, and can you appeal to the feds to investigate the phony electors, since our attorney general will not?
We've appealed to the feds for a lot of things related to the election subversion activities that have taken place in Arizona since the election. Their response, quite honestly, has been underwhelming, but I think I have to believe that they're in the process of building a case to hold the people at the very top accountable. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of evidence gathering. And I think that January 6th Commission is doing a lot of that work. So I think, yes, I don't know about, you could ask an election attorney if there's a case to be brought by citizens. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not an attorney, but yeah, I think I believe that they're working as hard as they can to build a strong case to hold the people at the top accountable for the insurrection, and that should be their focus.
Thank you. We have one quick question from one of our outstanding volunteers, Diana Christensen. Diana, do you want to ask your question?
I sure do. For those so inclined, what's the best way that we can support your candidacy?
I said my website, but I'm putting it in the chat right now. So it's katiehobbs.org, and we did really well with fundraising, raised almost $3 million, but that's still going to be a big need all the way through election day on November 8th. So if you can support with contributions now, in the future, continuously, however, that would be great. Also, volunteers. Right now, our volunteers are mostly working on mailings. So it's kind of geographically in Phoenix, but we'll have a lot of more things to do down the road. And then, as I mentioned, signing the petition, there's a link on my website to sign online. But if you want paper petitions to circulate, we can also get those to you as well. And I think Josie is on this call, and her email is Josie, Josie at katiehobbs.org. So if you want petitions, you can email her and she can get them to you. Just let her know which county, because they're divided by county.
We should probably have some in the DORR office. So maybe Josie, you and I can speak later about that. All right. Thank you so much, Katie, for being with us. We appreciate it. It was good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it so much. And anytime you want me back, I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Hopefully
Stay
in
well.
person soon.
Thanks, Katie. Bye.
Bye.
Kathy, you had a couple of announcements.
Yeah, I have a
for our
couple of
next
quick
speaker.
announcements. First of all, I want to acknowledge the elected officials that are on the call. It took us a while to go through the 72 people and pull everyone out. Katie Hobbs was here. Of course, she's our current Secretary of State. We have former City Council member Angela Lefevre, Mayor Sandy Moriarty, and Vice Mayor Scott Jablow, Councilor Holly Plug, Councilor Kathy Kinsella, and former Councilor Ernie Strow. We also have some candidates with us. Pete Furman and Brian Fultz are both Democrats that are running for City Council, and Sandy Moriarty and Scott Jablow are running as Democrats for mayor. So thank you all for being here. Sorry I couldn't acknowledge you earlier. A couple quick announcements. Okay, so if you're a member but you haven't renewed yet, could you do that for us like now? And Shelley, if you could put the link, or somebody could put the link in the chat, that would be great. It would be really helpful. There's been a lot of emails that went out. You can renew by, going into the office if you want to write a check. or you can mail one to Democrats of the Red Rocks. Our dues went up just a little bit, $30 for an individual and $50 for a family. So you can do it that way, or you can go online and there's an easy link to do it, or you can look at one of our emails. It's at the bottom of every one of our emails, and you can do it that way. If you don't renew and we have to send you a letter, it's going to cost us 58 cents. Cost 58 cents to send a letter now. So that's going to be our next effort to get people to renew. So please help us out and renew. And then the last thing, or a couple of other things, I want to talk about the action committee. I talked about it in my speech, but I just want to mention that Toby is doing that now. If you're interested in getting on the action committee, you can email her. It's really a simple email address, but somebody can put it in the chat also, action@democratsoftheredrocks.org, and let her know. And then she'll hook you up with being able to connect with our state legislatures. And you'll also get an email with information about how to talk to our federal legislators. Really important work. Lastly, Friends of DORR. As I said when I was talking earlier, we work around the year, every year. We have our office open, except during the worst part of the pandemic, we had to close it, unfortunately. We have an office that we have all the time. We have people working all of the time. And so, of course, we need some funding to do that. Please become a friend of DORR. And if you're already a friend of DORR, encourage others to do it. You can do it for as little as $10 a month. What it is a recurring donation. If you want to give it to us all in one chunk, there's a way to do that too. But if $10 a month works well with your budget, $10 a month, that adds up to $120, and that really helps us. So please become a friend of DORR. Again, I think that's at the bottom of the email. It's definitely on our website, and that will really help us out to have sustained funding coming in for our sustained efforts. So thanks everybody for being here, I want to say also. Go ahead, Ellen. Oh, you're muted, yeah.
Yep, sorry. I did put in the chat just now the link for people who would like to join the Request to Speak training. We're having those Monday mornings at 9 a.m. sponsored by DORR. We have an outstanding trainer that will show you how you can comment on legislation that is pending before committees at the state legislature. And from what I hear, this does make a difference. It is reviewed. Our comments, oh my God, how do I turn that off? Sorry, my sister. You can make comments, online, and they are heard by legislators, and the press picks up on those. And it's a very important action that we can take. So I would urge everybody to get that training if you haven't already done. Oh my God, it's my sister. So sorry. God, okay. Okay, there we go. Next, I would like to welcome a guest that is with us today, another candidate for governor, Aaron Lieberman. Aaron met a lot of us because he came to our DORR picnic in September. And we appreciate your being there with us, Aaron. That was great. We know it's a drive up here, and we do appreciate your being here. Aaron was in the state legislature for 2 terms, and he has an outstanding background, much of which was in your announcement. A lot of great things in education with preschoolers, and started his own nonprofit. And he's got a great background and is here to get us to help us know him a little bit better. He does have a little video that we're going to look at too. So Aaron, welcome. Thanks again for being here today.
Well, thank you all for having me, and Kathy and Ellen, thank you for putting this together and the level of activity. That is by far the most beautiful setting for a political event ever, sitting at that incredible park looking out over the Red Rocks. I will come anytime. For sure, but we have a short video that we'll show. It's about 90 seconds, and then I'll give a little bit of my background, and I really want to leave as much time as possible for questions to hear from all of you. So thanks for having me, and we'll roll the video. Hopefully, Michael and my team will get that thing up.
Ellen, I just still cannot share my screen. Could you make me a co-host?
We made
please?
Aaron the co-host. Sorry. Okay.
No problem.
That is above my pay grade.
Kathy, Michael San Roman. If you could make him a co-host.
Okay, I'm looking for you, Michael. Might take him a second for me to find you.
Sorry.
No problem. That is above my pay grade. I would, mess that up.
Okay, here.
Michael, oops,
Yep.
R-A-C-K, that we have two Michaels. Which one?
San Roman.
Okay.
San Roman.
Okay. All right, there you go.
Great. Now you made Martha Mertz.
Martha, don't share anything.
So close.
Yeah, I know, it's so close. I thought I was holding it over. Okay, make co-host. Okay, now it's correct. There we go.
There we go. Sorry for the delay.
I met Aaron as a parent in the Oscillero Learning Head Start program.
Tamika was just now enrolling her daughter in preschool for the first time.
Although Aaron was the CEO and co-founder of Oscillero Learning Head Start, he was very approachable.
I was an accidental entrepreneur who ended up getting the opportunity to impact hundreds of thousands of children and families.
Aaron doesn't just work with the kids, he works with the parents.
We figured out a totally different way to partner with our parents to help them be their child's first teacher, to help them get their kids ready for success.
If it wasn't for Aaron, my child wouldn't be going to college. If it wasn't for Aaron, I wouldn't have gone to college. The thing that's so cool about Aaron is that he sees the potential in people that they don't even see in themselves.
It was incredible to see her grow from when we first met to where she is now today, which is a national advocate for causes that she cares about, that she feels deeply because she's experienced it in her own communities.
People talk about rising above and creating change, but Aaron has done it every moment of his life. I know that Aaron has what it takes to bring people together to get things done.
Well, thank you again for having me. I'll just give you a little bit of my bio and then kind of get to questions as quickly as possible. I'm a local Arizona kid, born and raised. I grew up at 22nd Street in Glendale, right in front of Fiesta Peak. Growing up, I felt Arizona was the best place in the world to be a kid. It didn't matter who your dad was or where you went to school. What mattered in Arizona was how you acted, how you carried yourself. And we were doers. This was before they had all the video games and everything else like that. So we were outside, 300 days of sun, making things happen in our natural environment. And, as I've gone back and looked at it, a lot of that was the same ethos that our politicians were practicing then. How many people on this call were in Arizona in the 1980s? Maybe give a little raise like that if you were. We got a group of us. It's so easy to forget about what I think is the true history of the state because we've had such extreme political leaders for so long now. But in the 1980s, we had a Democratic governor, Bruce Babbitt. That's a good start right there. A Republican majority leader, Burt Barr, who's the library is named after him in downtown Phoenix. I heard this story, which I think perfectly encapsulates that era of Arizona politics, which is every Sunday when the legislature was in session, Governor Babbitt would go over to Burt and Barr's house, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and talk about what they were going to do together to move the state forward, not as Democrats or as Republicans, but as Arizonans. And if we look back at what they did, it was amazing to see. I mean, they created the Groundwater Management Act in the early 1980s that said if you're developing new homes, you have to have a certificate for 100 years of water. We joined Medicaid. We were the last state to launch a Medicaid program, but we did it in a totally different way. And those things have endured because they were compromises born of people working together across party lines to really make a difference. And that's not where it started. It didn't just start there. It started well before there. It started with people like, Mo Udall and Barry Goldwater. Again, completely ideological opposites, but they worked together in Congress in Washington, D.C. to make sure our state got funding for the Central Arizona Project, where 70% of our state gets drinking water from today. It just is a reinforcement that we built this state out of a dry desert washbed, not by attacking and belittling each other, but by working together to get things done. That was the same spirit I took into my senior year at Yale. I started a program to train college students to work one-on-one with preschoolers who were struggling in Head Start. And, a lot of life is timing, but what started with one what started with 15 college students in New Haven, Connecticut, has spread all across the United States. 50,000 college students have served as Jumpstart Corps members. They've worked with 100,000 preschoolers, and every single one of those preschoolers walked into kindergarten better prepared than they otherwise would have been because of the literally hundreds of hours of one-on-one reading experience they got. It just shows what we can do when we're willing to invest, how you can make so many more kids and families successful. After doing that for about a decade, I was kind of an accidental entrepreneur. I had learned how to build and grow things. I then spent 15 years building and growing a childcare company serving low-income kids called Oscillero Learning. That's where I first met Tamika. I was actually the Head Start director when we took over the Las Vegas Head Start program. And I saw there what an incredible impact early childhood can make, high quality early childhood education, but you have to do it well. I used to say, well, paint the classrooms purple if that gets better results for kids. It doesn't, by the way, we looked into that. But what really made a huge difference was when we were willing to support our teachers in a totally different way, to partner with our parents like Mika and others in a totally different way. And the results speak for themselves. The kids in our Head Start programs make gains at 2.5 times the national average, spending the same amount of money as almost every other Head Start program. And that's what I think we need in our next governor, what I was able to do there, to pull together diverse leaders from all different backgrounds, to work with all of our stakeholders, and ultimately to make sure our employees had the resources they needed to succeed. And I held them accountable for making sure we were reaching our goals, right? That's what we need in our next governor, who is going to be the chief executive officer for the state of Arizona. When I moved back home to Arizona, I couldn't believe how nasty our politics had become. Instead of folks like Bruce Babbitt and Burt Barr, we had Joe Arpaio and Russell Pierce, divisive leaders who were playing us off against each other. It was the opposite of the Arizona politics that I grew up in, where our leaders were bringing us together. They were literally dividing us for their own narrow partisan gain. We had a state representative in my own legislative district who was very extreme. She thought that gay kids should have to go to conversion therapy, and she called the Red for Ed leaders socialists, and I just couldn't take it. I ran for the legislature in 2018 in a district that had 12,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. I knocked something like 6,000 doors that long, hot summer. I ended up winning in the general election, defeating this Republican by just a couple thousand votes. I brought the legislature to 31 Republicans to 29 Democrats, just the closest it's almost ever been. And I went down there ready to get to work. I'm so proud of what I was able to accomplish. In the middle of the pandemic, I got millions of dollars, so every public school in the state could do distance learning for their teachers, to help the teachers learn how to become effective distance instructors. And suddenly they were all thrown into this remote instruction in the pandemic. Most recently, I got $15 million for our small businesses that were impacted by COVID, so they could keep the lights on over this last summer. And I'm really proud of what I was able to do to help constituents throughout my legislative get connected during that critical time of the pandemic with unemployment, whatever it was that they needed to help navigate that. But I also saw bad things happen for the state. And I served on the Appropriations Committee. I watched over $2 billion in cuts to revenue, while we have 2,000 classrooms with no teaching. Right? It's just been heartbreaking to see our lack of investment in the things that almost all Arizonans agree we need to do more of. And that's really where I'm at. I believe we can have it all in Arizona. We can have a booming economy, and we can have great schools. We can have clean air and clean water, and we can have the green energy jobs that come with them. We don't have to trade off growth for caring, which is essentially what we've been told over the last nearly 15 years of one-party rule since Janet Napolitano left in 2009. But we can't get to making those investments that we need. We need universal pre-K for every 4-year-old. We need to pay our teachers 25th in the country instead of 49th. We need to invest in our community college students so that they can get to and through community college if they're willing to do the work to keep up a B average. Those three things combined cost over $1 billion. We're running a $2 billion surplus right now. I don't think we need to raise your taxes. I just think we need to use the surplus we're generating right now to invest in the things that will broadly make Arizonans more successful. And if we do that, we're going to help everybody succeed. I love the Paul Wellstone quote, "We all do better when we all do better." That's what this is about, but we can't get there if we don't elect Democrats who can win in November. And this is the critically important point. Democrats win 10,000 votes statewide. That's what Biden won by. A landslide is 50,000 votes. You have to have a candidate who can run a near perfect race, and a candidate who can get the 2/3 of independents that you need, and even that slice of Republicans to win. I'm that candidate because I've approached problems differently my entire career, both in my private life and in my public sector service. That's what's going to be the opportunity here to bring the state in the middle, but we can't do it alone. Michael will share a bunch of links for folks, how you can volunteer, sign the petition, all of those things. I'm also just really excited to hear from folks today what questions you have. You can ask me absolutely anything. If we don't get to your question, Michael will put my email in the chat and we can follow up offline. But I very much look forward to connecting, and thanks again for having me.
You're welcome. Well, thanks for being here. You paint a bright picture. I'm optimistic. I would love to be optimistic. I would love to be more optimistic than I am, really. But we all do have our work cut out for us. Who has questions for Aaron? Anybody? This is usually a group that has lots of questions. Are you working with Save Our Schools at all?
I love Save Our Schools. That is an incredible group of just citizen leaders who have rolled up their sleeves. They saved us on this massive voucher expansion, and they're an incredible group of education leaders who have done a great job. Really, it started as a bunch of moms, to be clear. I mean, these aren't professional teachers. These are parents of public school kids who rolled up their sleeves. We have something like 1.25 million kids in our Arizona public schools. We have like 22,000 kids in private schools. The notion that we should be spending all this money to help kids get into private school or to and through private school doesn't make any sense. We need to focus on improving the quality of our public schools, where the vast majority of all of our Arizona kids are. We can't do that if we're paying our teachers so low. It's a labor market problem, right? If you pay people more money to do a job somewhere else, they go somewhere else. That's exactly what's happened in Arizona, and that's why we've got to invest more in our schools to make it happen. I will do that in our first budget. The budget I introduce will put us on a path to getting to 25th in the nation. That's where they were when I went to my Madison Heights, my local public school down the road in the late 70s and early 80s. That's where we need to get back to begin to do all the rest that we want to do for our schools.
All right, thanks. We have a question from John Neville. How are you going to deal with Lake and Gaynor, the Trumpists that are running as Republicans?
Yeah, I don't think Gaynor has a big chance of winning that primary, but Kari Lake does and likely will. I think Kari Lake is going to be the Republican nominee. And, if there's one thing we've seen from the lesson in Virginia, a career politician on the Democratic side, just talking about the last election, that is not a good value proposition for voters, especially our voters here in Arizona. You need to make this election about something. And for us, it's going to be about not giving into the extremists and doing what Arizonans want to do. Investing in our schools, making sure we have good access to healthcare, and getting us on a path to having clean air and clean water. My response to Kari Lake in a debate is going to be pretty simple. Unlike you, Kari, I've been a business builder and a job creator. I've signed the front of a paycheck. I know what that's like and what that entails. But I've also gotten elected to something and have had to work with people I totally disagree with to get things done for the state. That is what our independents who decide our elections want to hear. And that's what I've done in my background. And that's what I'll do as your next governor.
All right, thank you. We have another question. We've got some excellent candidates on the Democratic side that are running for governor. We had Katie that was just here, and we have another candidate, Marco Lopez, who was at our picnic, but unfortunately couldn't be here this morning. What is your strategy to win the primary election?
Yeah, look, Democrats in Arizona are sick of losing. David Garcia ended up losing by 300,000 votes to Doug Ducey. He was defined by $25 million in negative ads, all on this one issue of the border wall in southern Arizona. The Republicans do not play fair, and they do not play nice. I think the reality of it is, for anyone who has followed the story, the Tanya Adams story and Secretary Hobbs is a difficult one. It's the facts of the case are really, really challenging. We've now had two federal jury verdicts specifically on this point that have said Tanya was discriminated against based on race and sex, and she was retaliated against for raising the fact that she was getting paid $3,000 less than her white peers. The negative ads on that have already been written. They're the Tanya Adams, what's already on YouTube from her speaking on all of our news shows and everything else. It's going to be very, very difficult to win statewide with that sort of negative ad already out there, which will be seen by literally every single voter in the state of Arizona. And I think that's a concern. You know, my candidacy has been surging since that story broke in early November. We raised $350,000 in December alone. To win statewide, you can't be super partisan identified, and you've got to, you got to run close to a perfect campaign. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for Secretary Hobbs, given what has happened over these last 6 weeks. I don't take any joy in that. I wish this had never happened, mostly for Tawanya Adams, who lost 4 years of her life kind of fighting against what happened to her. I think the second part of that, in terms of Marco Lopez, I really applaud Marco. He and I often are the ones showing up to things, going out there and doing stuff, and I think he's really put in the work. I think my experience in the legislature is a real difference maker there. I served on the Appropriations Committee. I served on the Education Committee. I served on the Natural Resources Committee. I know in detail how our state works. I know how we spend, not quite every penny, but pretty, I have a very detailed understanding of our state budget, which is critical for the next governor. I also know the legislature well, because that's where I spent, years of my life. I know who you can work with and who you can't, particularly on the Republican side. And the reality is, I think even odds, especially the way redistricting came out, is I hope to be a Democratic governor who may very well have still a narrow margin, but Republicans in controlling the state house and the state senate. I'll veto any bill that restricts a woman's right to choose, that makes it harder for Arizona citizens to vote, and that attacks our teachers. But you also got to proactively get things done. And to do that, to make progress, you're going to have to work with Republicans. I have the track record of having done that. I've built those relationships, and I will be able to move things forward that are of what most Arizonans want to do.
Johnny's out. Johnny's out.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Good answer. Another question, growth versus water. How do you see things breaking out in the future, and what are your positions on the environment and water?
Yeah. This is a great question, and it's a big concern for Arizonans. And, one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the unregulated groundwater pumping for agricultural uses, which is actually really scary right now, where we're having in Kingman, the water table is down to, by some estimates, just 50 years left. And they're pumping water for pistachio trees and these things that, we have no idea what's going on. At a minimum, I think we should give our county supervisors the flexibility to move into rural water management like we have in our active management areas in our 3 most populous counties. In terms of the rest of our growth, we need to get working on all fronts to make sure we have the water we need to continue to be able to grow and develop as a state. Sometimes people lose sight of the fact when we're converting agricultural land to residential use, we're actually reducing the water usage pretty significantly. And that's been the story. We use less water in Arizona now than we did in the 1960s, but we've got to have that development be smart. We've got to have real conservation efforts to try to make sure we're not, wasting any water. And we've got to work on additional sources of water for the future, just like we did with CAP, the Central Arizona Project. But CAP took 60 years from when it was first proposed to when it started delivering water. These things take a long time. I disagree with a lot of what Governor Ducey has done. This $1 billion proposal in this budget to start working on desalinization is a very good idea, one that Democrats have been talking about for a long time. If you look at the history of the state, we've made more progress under Democratic governors on water issues than we have under Republicans, because they're more willing to bring all the stakeholders together and forge a compromise that no one gets everything they want, but that actually helps build the sustainable solutions we need for the state. That's what Bruce Babbitt did. That's what Janet Napolitano was able to do. And that's what all do.
Okay, thank you. Now, we know this is not in the hands of the governors, but short-term rentals is a big issue to us in Sedona, as you know. What do you think can be done with the state legislature? Do you think it's possible, and what would you like to see happen?
I'm so glad someone raised this issue. This was the issue that I fought the hardest on the legislature and was so frustrated by how little progress we were able to make. I think we need the best answers to problems are usually in the heads of the people closest to the problem. We need to give this back to our cities and towns to regulate the rest of our zoning, to be able to regulate our short-term rentals. Not only Sedona, Flagstaff, Paradise Valley. I mean, all these areas have been decimated. Something like 45% of every single police call in the town of Paradise Valley is going to short-term rentals. We literally had people killed at these parties. That is taxpayers subsidizing these operators. And, to me, we either have a residential zoning or we don't. So I just want everyone to know on the short-term rental thing, I am with you on this fight. You can go back and look. I introduced repeals every year at the legislature. I got a Republican to co-sponsor it with me. And I also worked on any compromise measure just so we could make some progress. The most powerful tool a governor has is saying the following sentence in their State of the State budget address at the beginning of the legislative session. Until this happens, I will not sign a budget in a legislature. And that is my situation on short-term rentals. Until we make meaningful progress in my first year in office on empowering local municipalities to regulate short-term rentals, I will not sign a budget. It is the most powerful club a governor has. You use it sparingly. That and teacher pay are the two things that I've talked about we have to make progress on. But it is not right what has happened in our neighborhoods, and it's not right what has happened to our neighbors. And I will stop it, and we'll make significant progress in my first year.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much, Aaron. We appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. And I know we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, so we will see you on the campaign trail.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for this time. Arizona, we win when our Democrats get involved and roll up their sleeves. And it happens even, and I know what it's like. Sometimes it can feel hopeless when you see these great candidates and then they lose in your local legislative district races. But everything you do to produce turnout elected Joe Biden, right? Everything you do to produce turnout will help us win our next Democratic governor. And it's going to be a close race, and it's going to take absolutely everybody rolling up their sleeves to make it happen. If you like what you heard, we're working to get on the ballot. We're working to get volunteers. We're working on the fundraising front. We have stuff you can do from your own living room that help the campaign. I really hope you'll get involved. And again, don't be a stranger. Michael will share my email. Look forward to connecting, and we can have the state we all want. We're very, very close. We just got to get over the top and get a governor who's a Democrat, who's actually fighting for the issues we all care about in November. That's what I'm going to do. And thanks again for having me today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks
You're
for
welcome.
being here, Aaron. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good care.
Thanks. Kathy, can I just say that I put in the chat the link to a meeting that is happening tonight at 6:30. The Yavapai County Democrats are meeting tonight, and they're having several candidates there, including the 3 that will be running from our new district next year, LD1. So I would recommend that everybody who is interested, who wants to meet the 3 new people for Senate and the 2 House seats, please try to make a little time to be on that call at 6:30 tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. We need to learn who they are. We need to learn about them. So please come.
Yeah, we do.
I think you need to pre-register for that meeting as well.
Oh, okay.
So
So
if
the link
you
and-
want to be there at 6:30, you need to go on and pre-register for that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Ken.
I'm going to put that link in again because
Yeah, that would be good.
the thing.
Oh,
Chat
it's
is,
yeah, cool.
okay.
I'll use it too.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. So I had somebody ask a question to me a little while ago about what our work looks like this year. I have to say we are still, we're going to have a retreat on February 5th. We are still planning our work out. We're trying to decide how to prioritize in light of all the changes that we've had this year. But we will definitely be knocking doors. We will know on April 4th or maybe April 5th. April 4th is the last day that candidates can file their petitions to become, or potential candidates can file their petitions to become candidates. And so sometime in early April, we will know exactly who the candidates are. And once we know that, that will help us even more to prioritize that work. The most important thing that DORR does, the thing that makes the difference in elections, the things that brought the 75% turnout in 2014 up to 85% turnout in 2018 was voter contact. There's knocking on doors, there's making phone calls, and then there's all of the support work that goes behind doing that. And so we do need volunteers. If you would like to volunteer, I get the emails for that, and one of the people on my volunteer team will contact you. And it's a simple email again, it's volunteer there's no S on it, right, Shelley? I think volunteer@democratsoftheredrocks.org. And the neighborhood program is still going, and that program, you get your own neighborhood that where you get to talk to voters. So if you're interested in that, if you want more information, please, email us, give us a phone call, and we'll update you as we go along with these breakfast meetings each month. I do want to say this was such a critically important breakfast meeting. We recorded it. We record them all. You can go onto our website and watch old ones, or our YouTube channel, which maybe Shelley will put that in the chat also. This one was so critically important. Please, when it comes out, the email comes out to you as members or people that are on our email list, share it with everyone you know. This was critical that we get these candidates heard by as many voters as possible. My philosophy, I think I made up this quote, but I'm not sure, is an informed voter is a voter that votes. And as everyone said, this is a critical election. We have to get all the votes out. If we want to win that governorship, we have to make sure every possible person that's going to vote for a Democrat votes. So that being said, I want to thank everyone this morning for being here. It was a fabulous meeting. Great job, Ellen, in planning the program and moderating the program. Are there any final thoughts before we all go on to our day? All right, so keep fighting the fight and onward, and have a wonderful Thursday. Bye, everyone.
Doing well.